and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kadash. She'll tell the story of the middle school, and then she'll turn it over to Dr. Spanek, and she'll tell the story of Sunset Ridge. And other two administrators may jump in as we talk about some of the questions that are there. And I really just encourage the discussion to stop. There's some points in there that you'll see where we stop and say, here's what we see in the data, but having some discussion about that is what we're hoping to do. Let's see how it goes. So to start off with, the Illinois 5 Essentials is, if you're not familiar with it, it's purported as an evidence-based system designed to drive continuous improvement in school districts. It is mandated in some form. It's important I put that in parentheses there, that what the Illinois State Board of Education says is you have to do a school climate survey every year. You can either take the 5 essentials and do it, or you can come up with another survey that meets all the criteria of the 5 essentials. And you can pay for that on your own and do it all on your own. But there are some districts that choose to go, for example, Hoosier High School. They don't do the 5 essentials. They do another school climate survey. So it's mandated in some form, but that's why you might have some variability if you look at, for example, if you have a kid in Hoosier, you say, well, why aren't they doing the 5 essentials? I thought it was mandated. Well, it's mandated in some form. It's based on over 20 years of research out of USC, and these are the 5 essentials: effective leaders. And again, as I just talked about, principal works with teachers to implement a vision for school success. That's how they define it. But we really think about that beyond just print. It's not just the principal, it's the administrators. Collaborative teachers involve families, strong relationships with families and communities to support learning, supportive environment, school safe and orderly, expectations for students are high, students realize the goals, classmates support each other, and ambitious instruction. Classes are academically demanding and engaging. So that's the 5 essentials. Why do we care about this? Ms. Joseph just talked a little bit about that. There is a breadth of research that indicates there's a link between these 5 essentials and school success and effectiveness. And if you bring that really down to a local level and think about our strategic plan, 4 of the 5 essentials that I just talked about: effective leaders, safe and responsive environment, innovative, engaging curriculum, skill empowered workforce, those are things that are in our strategic plan and directly relate to 4 of the 5 essentials. So not only does the research tell us this is something we should be interested in, but just looking at our own strategic plan says those are things that we really care about. And it is a standardized form. It's a quantitative assessment. That's not to say that it's totally objective. It's important to understand that the assessment is completed by teachers, by students in grades 4 through 8, and by parents, and it's their subjective perceptions of various aspects of the environment, but it is standardized, and it is quantitative. So it allows us to monitor our progress over time, and also gives us some ability to compare ourselves, as you'll see in a second, with other schools, insofar as we wish to do that. It's also important to know that there's limitations. It's not the end all be all. It is one indicator of school climate. It's not everything. The elements are predictive of and important for school success, but they don't necessarily cause improvement. The 5 essentials, as I just talked about, is based on subjective perspectives of the respondents. And finally, as we talk often in this district, that our sample size is very small. So if you think about one of the schools, one teacher is a 5% difference. So you don't want to get too excited about, something that goes up by 5% or too upset by something that goes down by 5%, but just understand the impact of sample size. What is the suggestion to use this data most usefully? First, and what we hear is 3 areas. It has Ms. Kadash and Dr. Spanek tell their story. First is, where are we strong? Well, looks like it's going really well. Second is, what are areas that maybe they haven't been so strong, or they're improving from what we've had in the past? And finally, what are areas for continuous improvement? So we'll be talking about those 3 sort of buckets tonight. Always important to interpret a plan in context as we talk about IAR or map testing or anything, to triangulate data with other sources and say, does that indicator match with other things we heard? You'll hear about vertical and horizontal articulation or alignment of curriculum tonight. And we talked about in other sources how teachers say there's poor vertical alignment in the curriculum, which is one of the things that led us to math, look at new math curriculum. The data in the 5 essentials collaborates. So we're triangulating that data. And then on the other end is planning for high-level holistic interventions that you don't have to touch everything or everyone to make a difference, but planning on a high level for how we can impact these 5 essentials and involving our stakeholders in that process. And I'm sure the principals will talk to you about how they've already presented the state over their teams and talk about it. It's a subtle nuance, just from this presentation at the board meeting to also what we've done at the school level. If you don't remember last year, I stood up here and I presented the 5 essentials to you. And the principal sat in the audience and listened to it. And then I went to the staff meetings and presented the 5 essentials. And we're intentionally doing this presentation where the principals are standing out there and talking their story. They took the data without me being present there to their staff meetings, saying, this is our data. What are we doing about that? So involving the stakeholders. And then always important to monitor and reflect on our progress. I'm always dumbfounded by the state's rating scales on things. You know, that they have the meet standards, but 25% of kids meet standards in the state on IAR. Similarly, on the 5 essentials, ISBE gives this categorical rating. If your score is between 40 and 60, it's called neutral. Now, you might say that's the average score, but you'll see when I show you the state data, the neutral is actually the average of what the state is. But they say 40 to 60 is neutral, above 60 is strong, 2 standard deviations or 80 to 100 is very strong, 20 to 40 is called weak, and then 0 to 19 is very weak. That's their overall scale. So the first thing I have here, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is I just want to show you the state versus township versus Middle Fork versus Sunset Ridge just for last year's data. And one of the things I wanted to mention here, you'll notice that Middle Fork is not, there's no green for supportive environment or ambitious instruction. And that's because only those 2 measures are student-based measures, and only 4th through 8th grade students complete it. So they don't do that at Middle Fork. So Middle Fork only has 3 essentials. Sunset Ridge has the 5 essentials. You can see what the state average is on involved families, just over that neutral zone, collaborative teachers. I don't need to read them for you. You can see what the township average is, and our scores in both schools relatively, up there as you expect, involved families. Collaborative teachers, Middle Fork similar to the township, pretty similar to what the state average is. Sunset Ridge a little bit higher. Effective leaders, you can see where those are. And Sunset Ridge a little bit higher. Supportive environment, which is only Sunset Ridge compared to the township, you can see higher than both the township and the state. Any questions on that? Yeah. Yeah, so the involved families understand that that's from a teacher perspective. Teachers are to get the parent data is never included in the 5 essentials, never in any of this. Okay? They have some supplemental measures that they'll give you. If you have 20% of your parents for a given school fill out the survey, then they have supplemental parent measures that tell you what's the parent's preferred method of communication, how do they rate the facilities, things like this. But those are not part of the 5 essentials. That makes sense? We didn't in either school have the 20% again this year. We had about 18% at Sunset Ridge. So we're chasing that again this year of how do we get the word out that people can complete it. Because there is useful data, even though it doesn't come out in 1 to 5 essential data. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, well then, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Dash to talk about the Middle Fork story. Oh, you got it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sam. And good evening, Board of Education. Today, I look forward to telling you the Middle Fork School story, a story of our school culture, the ecosystem that's influenced by our students, our teachers, our admin team, and our families. In this story, I'm going to share parts that we are very proud of, strengths, areas that we have proudly improved with, and areas that we still feel are very important that we need to continue to grow in. Let's see if I can manage to use this technology. Let's see. Okay, got it. Great, thanks. Okay, so this story begins with a longitudinal view of the Middle Fork 5 Essentials data over the past 6 years. That bold vertical line demarcates a resetting of the clock, shall we say, 4 years ago, with a new principal who certainly affects the school ecosystem, a pandemic which changed everything for our students, parents, and teachers. Since the pandemic, student needs have intensified, diversified, and teaching has never been harder. And at Middle Fork School, where we embrace the youngest learners, we often see some of the most challenging behaviors. Part of the Middle Fork culture story is acknowledging that groups go through different stages as they develop. Forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I truly believe that Middle Fork has grown a lot over the past few years through forming and storming post-pandemic and with a new principal. And we're entering a norming stage where we have a genuine spirit of cooperation for working towards team goals and working through differences of opinion on how we want to move forward. It's a real coming together of the staff. I'm really proud of how much we've grown over the 4 years, and I'm confident the upward trend will continue. In the next few slides, we will unpack these a little bit further. The first of Middle Fork's 3 essentials, I should say, is involved families. Why are involved families so important? Well, we know that a partnership, a strong partnership, leads to the academic and social emotional benefits for students. Our teachers reported strong parent-teacher partnership, feeling respected and supported by parents, as well as noting that there are some growth opportunities related to two-way communication and engagement. So, to take a deep dive into 3 of the questions, the first one was about teachers reporting that teachers and parents at the school think of each other as partners in educating children. And that is not only, it's an increasing trend in that some of the agrees have moved to strongly agrees, but it's also been a consistent strength over time. The second question about parent support, teachers' teaching efforts. In a recent staff meeting with Middle Fork teachers, they were sharing with me that they really feel like we are headed in the right direction with increased parent involvement, and they feel the support in a variety of ways. What was interesting to us as a staff was getting into this survey result in which teachers responded, kind of a 50-50 mix of parents responding to suggestions, not being as strong as some of our other areas. And that is something that we've been talking about, again, getting to communication. And so one of the things we're going to be looking at this year is how we can vary the communication so that it feels truly two-way, and so that teachers and parents can have that dialogue of suggestions and response. So, in terms of moving forward, some of our steps actually began after the 5 essentials, so it could be at the middle of last year, in which we worked together, both parents and teachers, creating a vision for what homeschool partnership should look like. That was something I tackled through cookies with Kadash, some one-on-one meetings with parents, as well as different team meetings with teachers to get their perspective on what it would really look like to have a strong partnership. We also increased family engagement opportunities for this school year. The teachers quite quickly decided to bring back some opportunities of the past and created some new opportunities. So for example, one of the past was kindergarten parent game day. And the teachers identified that post-pandemic, our students really do not have much experience playing board games. And so they are now recruiting parents to help teach the board games and teach a variety of board games throughout the year so that students can play these games independently during purposeful play. And then our final focus area will be encouraging two-way communication. The teachers and I have discussed a variety of ways to reach parents and to get their input back. Everything from surveys, photos that might stem a conversation, old school handwritten notes, and phone calls. In other words, we acknowledge there are many other ways besides email to bring our parents more fully into the mix. And unless there are any burning questions right now about this first essential, I was going to pause after the second essential for questions. Any burning questions?
Those are hyperlinked in the narrative.
Yes, those are hyperlinked, yes. Okay, great. The second of our three essentials is collaborative teachers. Teachers reported that they had strong opportunities to collaborate over curriculum and student data. They had strong reflective dialogue about students and programs, strong professional development, and there were some mixed results regarding mutual trust and respect amongst the teachers. It's exciting to see that middle four teachers reported feeling like collaborative practices are on the rise because as an admin team, we have been intentional about increasing collaborative practices so that ultimately all students might benefit and all teachers feel supported. Collaborative practices, according to the 5 essentials, include teacher-to-teacher observations, like we did last year with Number Corner and math, and time to collaborate with each other about their practices, like we've been doing at team meetings, and time to discuss student data, like we do in our MTSS setting. To get a little deeper, here are some of the questions that we reflected upon as a staff. One was that we are seeing that, or reporting that there's increasing collaboration on instructional strategies. So in other words, we all know that we're teaching reading and writing and word study, but we report feeling that we are now talking more and more and getting more and more on the same page with how we are teaching the curriculum. In addition, we've been going over student assessment data more with other teachers to make decisions, and teachers report that's increasing. I do want to add that in talking with the teachers at our recent staff meeting, we did talk about the second question a lot in terms of how we want to grow as a staff in using the right assessments to measure what's really important to us in our teaching and to directly make those decisions based on this data. This year, I'm quite optimistic that the math assessments we are doing will measure the whole math child, not just the final scores on their computations. So I'm optimistic that we are putting some of the right assessments into place, as well as I'm quite optimistic that now that we will have a K-3 common win time, or what I need time, this will connect students with teachers to meet their identified needs. If you'd like further information on WIN, I can expand on that later. while I did speak about this a little bit at the beginning, I did want to say that we are feeling that there's an increased frequency of dialoguing about the programs, again, what we're teaching, as well as about how students are performing. Specifically, as we've launched new curriculum, we've talked a lot about what the program outcomes are, and that has really helped teachers to truly understand what our goals are, and what we're aspiring to with our new curriculum. In terms of professional development, it's quite exciting to see that we had a 47% increase from last year with having coherently focused and sustained professional development, as well as a 16% increase with opportunities to work productively with colleagues in my school in terms of professional development days. Our admin team here works very closely, weekly, to talk about professional development that connects to our strategic plan, and that will be sustained and coherent over time, not just one and done. We know, and we also know how powerful it is for teachers to immediately apply what they learn by talking with their colleagues. So we really work hard to not just to be sit and get with our professional development, but let's learn together and then let's directly apply. Teacher-to-teacher trust. As you can see from the first graph, with the question, teachers in the school trust each other, we do have some polarized data. With the majority being on the agree and strongly agree, but also with a significant percentage under disagree and strongly agree, as well as teachers respecting each other, respecting teachers to take the lead in school improvement efforts. So we did talk about this actually very candidly as a staff, and we recognize that teachers are reporting very different experiences with this. And while we as a group, are pleased that the majority feel that trust and that respect, we did have a lot of questions about why some others are feeling very differently. One of the goal areas or actions that teachers suggested were, coming to each other, teachers coming to each other and having those difficult conversations, and having having support with that. One of the questions that arose were, well, was this survey taken on a day when there was a really difficult student situation, or in which colleagues may have disagreed about how to best handle it? And we did have some very challenging moments last year with some student situations. Or was it a specific teacher-to-teacher interaction? And then the teachers ended up taking the survey right around this time. So if anything, this has brought some self-awareness to the staff and me, and we've actually continued to have conversations since then about ways we can continue to build that trust. And so I believe I may have already mentioned some of these things, but I will just summarize this section by saying that we will continue to increase our data dialogue during our MTSS meetings. And by dialogue, we truly mean we are trying to build those skills of how to look at data and build our own interpretations and our own next steps. In terms of the trust piece, we really want to continue to foster a sense of belonging among staff through various community building activities we do in the lounge, through different inclusion activities that I learned through the Adaptive Schools group, in terms of helping all voices to feel heard in meetings, and mentoring, and more. And as well as the important third piece, which was suggested suggested by the teachers was to encourage teachers to have those difficult conversations with each other, because as someone said, people cannot change if they're not aware that there's a problem. So I want to pause there because I know I've shared a few important pieces of our school culture story, and so wanted just to open it up for any quick questions now.
Maybe I can see that there's just a couple things that were on my mind, and their time. And one of the things we were talking about two-way communication with parents. And for some of you that may have been around for a while, may know that we didn't always do parent-teacher conferences the way we do that now. It used to be, we had a parent-teacher conference in November. That was, you got your report card, then you came in and talked about it. Then we had a parent-teacher conference in February, you got your report card, and you chance to come talk about it. And in working with parents who are giving feedback on that, intentionally changed that structure and took away the November conference to meet about your report card and created an October conference. And the vision of that was really like an intake conference. Now your student has been in school for a little while, the teachers got to know them. Now let's have time to sit down and just meet with, not to talk about test data, or how's your kid doing? What can we do to support your kid in the school? What's successful, what's not working so well? And how when the pandemic came and kind of took us off the rails of that, and how we want to get back to that this year. And reopen and redefine that parent-teacher conference. But that struck me in terms of that two-way communication with parents and just highlighting that. Any thoughts you have from a parent perspective or board member perspective on, that opportunity in October to come in and just talk about your kid, how they're doing, what the school can do better to support you for your job? Sound like it's a good idea, not so good idea? Any thoughts?
I think those discussions are the best types of discussions because they're just like open-ended in a way. You don't necessarily have an agenda. But what I found is that the teachers here are so receptive anyways. I mean, I've had those conversations before and after those conferences.
Absolutely.
So, it also doesn't just have to be at that conference. I mean, that's a nice opportunity to have a structured time for that conversation. But I've had those conversations throughout the school year, especially if there were some things that I was, sensing may not have been going so well. And so I always appreciated how, the teachers have always been so responsive. I've never gotten a no, could you wait for conference, and that was not a good time. It's always been totally like in the moment. Let me find the first moment to have a conversation with you. So yes, I appreciate that being a structured way of talking about your child, but I also found that there's unstructured ways too.
Yeah. And I think, I'll say personally, what I find that this bringing back to this October conference is more about teacher than it is about parent. Say to the teacher, don't gather the fall map score and go over the fall maps, and that's your plan for the parent. Sit down with the parent and just connect. And if you've been in some of the parent connections meetings, that's what the parents were talking about when they're saying, I'm looking for that connection with the teacher, just a personal connection with the teacher, not around the map score or report card rating. I think it's a great way to just start that conversation so that you can continue to build that throughout. So that was just one thing that struck me. And then the other thing that Ms. Kadashi talked about, and I appreciate the way you referred to it, and just want to maybe dive into that a little bit deeper. I certainly don't want to take all the time that we have here on this, but recognizing that there have been a lot of challenges at Middlesbrough in the past year or two. Kids with more challenging needs, just because kids coming in, whether it's residual from the pandemic, or because we have taken in programs that used to be run by True North, and we're serving kids that we haven't served before. And as the superintendent, what I have seen is the need for, we brought in reading specialists. We didn't have that role before. An expert in reading to come in and talk about, well, here's what you do. And a behavior intervention specialist to come in and talk about, here's what you do. And specialists that work with kids with low incidence disabilities, well, here's what you do. And it's a change in course a little bit for that system. It hasn't come here to Sunset Ridge yet. Those kids haven't aged up here. But I've seen it at Middle Fork. And so this natural dynamic of people that come in who have expertise. And that's different and unusual than what Middle Fork teachers have seen in my 20 years in the district. Everyone was kind of on an equal playing field. And I think that does change the ecosystem of the school. And how do we navigate that so that those people that either are participating as leaders on district initiatives, or they're just experts in their field, coming and talking to a teacher who's been teaching for 25 years about, well, I know that used to work, but it doesn't work with this team. That's a challenge, and it actually takes effort to make that happen. So it just struck me as you were talking about. Any other thoughts or comments?
To build off a little bit of what we were talking about, which I see as like that home-school partnership, so these opportunities for parents and teachers to connect, conferences being one of them. I know that there's a hyperlink to the vision, but can we talk about what best practice really looks like? Like what should real, genuine home-school partnership look like? What's working really well? What kinds of things do we do? What kinds of things are we looking for to know that it's successful?
Well, I'm not going to quote best practice, but I'll tell you what we defined would be our best practice, what parents described to me, and what teachers also, agreed with. We had a lot of interest in it looking like, again, it's two-way. Parents are reaching out and sharing things like, my child's having a bad day. Can you look out for a little extra for my child today? And vice versa. Teachers reaching out to parents and saying, can you help me with this? I want to help your child with this more. What are your thoughts? So if the two-way piece was important, partnership also looks like for the benefit, the ultimate benefit of students. So if students are going to be benefiting from it, whether social, emotionally, academically, then that's the route to go. Partnership is listening. That's important. I could go on, but it is true, because partner means back and forth. It means we're in it together. It means goals, shared goals as well. It's a great question.
Any thoughts that any of the rest of you have on that topic? I want to try, I want to take up the whole meeting, but facilitate a discussion this time. Anything, Ms. Joseph, that you have to say? I, as a parent, as a school board member, would encourage you to think about this in terms of homeschool partnership.
Yeah, I'll bet all of us have some ideas about this. I think talking about communication and there being two-way communication and clear vehicles for that, appropriate vehicles for that, everybody understanding the best way to have those conversations. I think that's really important. I think structured opportunities, like for parents to deepen their understanding of students' experiences at school, which I think we do a really good job at, so that there's a sort of a deeper level of understanding, empathy about what happens during the school day for students, for teachers. So there being that kind of learning. And I think like educating parents too. Like teachers become to like social emotional learning. Like all of the sort of exposure that we're starting to do as a community to get on the same page about what social emotional learning is and what social emotional growth looks like. So I think those would be some components that I think about.
Great suggestion.
I like how you phrased it as structured opportunities, because I was looking for the right phrase to describe. I've been calling it special events. Things like when we invite parents in for a writing celebration so they can understand what the writing process looks like, or to be in, to see children explain their STEM projects. But the structured opportunity is all about the learning. So when I was saying meaningful special events, it really is, like you said, a structured learning opportunity together.
Yeah, I'm even thinking like I remember an activity, I think we did here, where parents had to write about their children for teachers. So there were some pretty focused questions where you as a parent, you do that when your kid goes over to your peer too. Like when you get an opportunity to really talk about your kid's strengths and areas of opportunity. So there's learning on both parts. So the school is becoming more knowledgeable about the child for the parents, and the parents are becoming more knowledgeable about the child. And that's me finding different creative ways of doing that and continuous ways of doing that, because kids are also, they're changing, right? Every year they develop and they change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I love how many of our teachers will use, and I was calling them surveys, but they're more of like intake forms or goal setting forms. What are some things you are hoping for your child? What are some things you'd like me to know about your child? And they do that multiple times throughout the year, and that's something I'd like to continue to incorporate.
Sam, did you
Is it, and I think maybe this is what you're reading in Shakira, I don't know if it's universal or not, but they have this reverse conference kind of concept in September where it's really early on in the school year. It's the advisory opportunity to sit down and tell me about your kid. Doing that all sorts of stuff at the end of the year. Reverse concept is a structured opportunity to, and we do the questions, and I think everything's great, and we've always felt very welcoming and able to talk to people, but a structured opportunity for people who don't instead of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard the phrase before of a listening conference, but I also like the idea of a reverse for the fall versus the spring. Yeah, that's a really
Great suggestions. And if you have other ideas or thoughts on that, please share them with us. I think we do need to move on, but thank you.
okay. So next, we're going to talk about effective leaders, another one of the quadrants of the Pi Essential Survey. Teachers reported strong feelings of having influence over the budget, curriculum choices, and behavior standards, having strong support from their administrative team regarding improving their teaching, and growth with our instructional program, Coherence. So looking at two of those questions in particular for teacher influence, you can see that 88% of teachers agreed or strongly agreed that they have influence in setting the standards for student behavior, as well as 92% felt that they can help to establish a curriculum and instructional program. That's something we've worked hard as a leadership team to increase teacher voice in curriculum, choosing key curriculum resources, and making those decisions. We convey all the time how much we trust their expertise, and we want their input on what would be the best resources to support our standards. Teachers report that administrators provide them with useful feedback to improve their teaching, and that similarly, the admin team has provided them with the support to improve their teaching. So the feedback, useful feedback, and the support needed. So in addition to our formal observations, we encourage our teachers to invite leadership into their classrooms to see something new that they're trying or something that they're proud of. And I believe that one of the challenges as an administrator is to differentiate the feedback we give to our teachers. We know that some might want feedback about their teaching done very directly. Some might want it to be more of a coaching situation where they come to it on their own. And so that's the constant challenge as we get to know our teachers better and better to find what is the most impactful for them. And then program coherence. So while the program coherence subscore of instruction of effective leaders, while this subscore was our lowest, I do believe this is one of the ones that has the most momentum because the work we're doing in math and in SEL has had a huge impact on program coherence. So not only have we been talking vertically on what we want our eighth graders to lead with in terms of a coherent program, but we're also talking horizontally about what we're focusing on in the resources and how we are teaching them. And I am very confident that our committee work in world languages and English language arts will have that same effect on our coherence. So teacher, principal trust, or teacher admin trust. So the first question, principal looks out for the personal welfare of the faculty. We can see that 88% agreed or strongly agreed. And then the principal has confidence in the expertise of the teachers. That was 96%. And that is certainly something that we're proud of. The teachers know that we believe they need to take care of themselves emotionally and physically before they can care for their students. And I believe our admin team has tried to communicate that family first and take care of self first in many ways, both in structured ways and informally. And the way, again, I keep coming back to the curriculum committees and things, but we often will have these amazing conversations with our teachers about, they'll say, well, what do we'll talk about, let's just say, an upcoming math unit. And with just a little bit of structured guidance regarding what the main goals are, they're often running, collaborating, helping each other to build materials and more. And they know that they don't need to cross-check things with us. We have full confidence in them doing an amazing job. Okay, and the next two questions, it's okay in the school to discuss feelings, worries, and frustrations, as well as teachers feeling respected. So it is an extremely important component of my job to nurture personal connections with staff and to make everyone feel comfortable with sharing their feelings, worries, and frustrations. While I'm pleased to see that the percentage of staff is shifting from agree to strongly agree, I do really think about and want to think about ways to make sure that our leadership team can make all teachers feel like they can be honest about sharing their feelings and giving us feedback, even when it's, especially when it's constructive. In diving into some of these questions with the teachers recently, one of the concrete action steps was simply that it would help the staff to sometimes understand why a decision was made. So, as we all know, we all need to know the why, and sometimes we make difficult decisions that are not popular with everybody, and simply explaining the why, teachers felt would go a very long way. So I do want to just acknowledge acknowledge this because to me, this is critically important. This is probably one of the most important questions that I want to explore and move forward in a way that makes everyone feel respected. And what I said to the staff last week was how much we all respect and trust them. And it's also our daily challenge to make sure they feel that and know that. Because everybody has different core needs and everybody needs their buckets to be filled in different ways. And that's just a challenge that but it's a challenge that I know will rise to. So, in terms of strategies related to this quadrant, one is differentiating feedback for teachers regarding teaching, encourage teacher problem solving with each other and the leadership team. In fact, some of the teachers said, that just really encourage teachers to, someone said, stop complaining and talk directly to people and, and share your thoughts and your creative solutions with the administrative team. And then when I wrote incorporate more inclusion strategies into meetings, what I mean by that is finding ways to check in and make sure that all voices feel heard and everybody feels seen. I'm going to go through this part really quickly because I want to be sure Dr. Sue Koenig has time for her portion. So one of the supplemental measures on the 5 essentials is behavior. And one of the things we noted from our data was a decreasing consistency of student attendance while increasing student verbal and physical behavioral challenges. With the first one, this is teachers reporting that attending class regularly has impacted instruction. And so what this kind of shows us is that there have definitely been articulated concerns about how attendance affects the child's learning in the classroom and how we've been seeing decreased consistency. Some, of course, is sickness, and anybody who is listening in, please know that we do want you to keep your children at home when they are sick. I am not giving that message. But we do often hear, about special family vacations or extracurriculars, and so that's just something to note. As well as the teachers have reported an increasing trend in classroom disruptions. So this kind of goes along the same lines in which, increasing trend in behaviors as well as physical conflicts. Some of the things we are speculating as a staff about are we wonder, if increased, bigger class sizes has, of course, increased, are there increasing behaviors because of that? Is it because of rising anxiety levels in our students, as well as quite often and sometimes in some of our parents as well? And so this is something that the staff and I have frequent conversations about how to improve. And so here they are. We will continue our implementation of Ruler. It's quite powerful to see even a kindergartner trying to identify how she is feeling, differentiating between angry and sad. Something we just saw today. And so we will continue to give our students that language for how they're feeling. We're continuing to evolve as a system with our MTSS approach for students exhibiting these distress behaviors. And the teachers also suggested this idea, which was to increase communication amongst the staff regarding expectations across all the settings, interventions that are working with different students. Because we have so many different recess periods and different adults who interact with students, we can continue to grow and being on the same page, as well as follow-through with parents and with each other. We know that some students need those extra doses of belonging, and our staff does a really great job of that, and we're working to communicate that more across the board so that we can support students. So I'm just going to just read the four of the bullet points. There were a lot of strategies shared tonight. Here are a few focal points for the year: strengthening homeschool partnership, focusing on building a positive culture and climate aligned to the theme of belonging, continuing work on professional development and curricular alignment, and mobilizing resources to support students. As I said in the beginning, I am really proud of our growth as a school culture the past 4 years, and I am confident from the honest and collaborative conversations that we're having that the upward trends will continue. And before Dr. Sukenic presents, if there's any questions, comments, suggestions, I'd love to hear them, or we can talk later as well.
I just have a really quick question. Go ahead. Mine is, and this might be just something we can look up, but obviously the kids are not in school, there's distractions in the classroom, it's hard to teach, it's distracting the whole thing. And kind of to your point, one student, one teacher could kick us up 5 to 10%. Do we have any way, or do we have the data, and are we have increasing absenteeism? Is that something that we're noticing trend in, which maybe that's in your check? And the second one, in terms of classroom behavior, is there any way that we can quantify that? Is it certain situations that this is sort of moving one ball to the snake and it's related to that, or is this a bigger thing? Is there any way to quantify this? I don't know.
I'll tee it up and let you go. I think 2 things. One is, through Power School, we can certainly look at Power School as our student management system. We can certainly look at attendance data and run some trend data and see what that's like. And then I know they have incident logs in both schools where they are tracking whenever something happens. So we can track that data as well. Can you just back up really quick? I just wanted to highlight something while we're on Sam's question. I wasn't going to bring it up, but now that he did, just go back to the student behavior, this one. That just notice, and I don't want people to overreact at the same time. When you look at this, it's like none, and then it's a few. So you see the none going down, and I think that's the difference. We're used to none. And you see the few going up. It's not almost all. Same thing down here. Not at all, a little. The sum is going up, but I think it's important to just understand what that graph is showing.
No, that is a really great perspective, because it's opposite of right. And I did want to say that we have, for the past 2 years, we've started collecting more and more specific data regarding our behaviors. And this year, when we were reviewing the data as a staff, we were looking at that word physical conflict, and we want to unpack that more so that we're all on the same page. And in identifying what a physical conflict is at Middle Fork, it will look very different, probably, maybe the same there. But I think now that we're getting better in how with the frequency of taking the data and the clarity, I think we'll have some more accurate measures.
Yeah, and then I'm not questioning data. I'm just trying to double click on it in regards to what does it look like.
100%. And as Dr. Steen said again, we want to triangulate our data, and so this is what teachers are reporting. And so as you're saying, we want to find other data that would either corroborate that or say, no, it's not.
Yeah, on the subject of attendance, is it being late? Is it like real truancy, or is it like a change in how a culture of when parents take vacation, or which of those things is it? I don't know if anyone here has any sense of that, or if that's something that we can get some more quantitative answers
I think we can dig deeper. I don't want to take too much time, but I think some of the things we hear are, at times we hear things like, well, they're only in kindergarten. You know, is my child really going to miss anything? Whereas I would suspect as they get older, parents feel like, oh my gosh, well, you're taking the entrance exam to New Trier, or you're taking this, you know, so there might be some of that.
But it's getting worse over time in kindergarten, suppose. Kindergarten.
Or you're having younger students involved in some travel teams that will take like a half day. So no, these are not tardies, these would be their half days or full days of absence. And I do want to also say, we also respect and value that our families are able to have amazing learning opportunities with their children out of the country and doing all these things. So I'm not just, but this is just what teachers reported in terms of attendance affecting classroom.
But I'll certainly run some data for you and see what we can see with attendance, tardiness, total absences.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. But overall, I just wanted to say thank you for that. And mostly trying to look good or improving sort of there was a post-pandemic slump, but we're seeing mostly positive and hopeful progress with the exception of this behavioral stuff. But I feel like probably some of the causes of that are hard for us to wrestle with, but it's important to keep our eye on and think about. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions on middle work? Dr. Scanlon, would you like to take the comment?
Yes, I will. Okay, so we have a lot more data, but I will try to be as concise as possible. This is just a closer look at the Sunset Ridge data over time. And as Dr. Sting mentioned, we went over each of our slides as a staff. And one of the things that really stood out to us was the slight decrease in ambitious instruction, which led to a larger conversation around teachers' experiences with students. So ambitious instruction is data from students. And when we dig down into this category, academic press and student discussion were decreased. So the rigor and discussion were decreased just a little bit, but it's definitely a trend that we're seeing and starting to see increased apathy in kids, which is kind of typically what we expect of adolescents, especially in 7th and 8th. But now our teachers of younger kids are starting to see it more. And so we're brainstorming as a staff, we need to constantly be adjusting our instructional strategies, not the content, but how we're engaging kids, because they're learning in different ways than how we learned. And so this just lended itself to a really good conversation, that ambitious instruction piece. And I'm going to try, and as I was looking at this data and we were talking about it as a staff, I want to make sure to touch a couple of times through this whole thing around the advantages of our size. I think we spend a lot of time talking about the disadvantages of our size. We're so small, we can't do this. We're so small, we can't do this. To me, some of this is just indicative of how much we can do because of our size, and obviously a lot of resources too. So starting with this closer look at involved families, the teachers rated this and overall felt like it was just really positive and increasing in involving parents in having conversations. And I think as you'll see at different parts of this data here and other places, both the work of Mrs. Crabtree and Ms. Evans in their leadership through the MTSS process and the curriculum process are already having a really tremendous impact on the culture and climate. I think our teachers are feeling incredibly supported and hopeful about the progress that we're making. So even talking about school curricula, talking about different ways that we can have these conversations about not just the content of curriculum, but how are we teaching and those instructional strategies. We just felt like we had strong parent-teacher trust and looking always for continuous opportunities for growth and engagement and feedback regarding curriculum. And that's something that Mrs. Crabtree, I know, is keeping in mind as she tackles kind of that leadership around all of the curriculum review cycles, is how are we going to continue to keep parents expertise, and being very clear about who the decision makers are. No. Okay, so as you probably, if you came to Sunset Ridge back to school night, we shared about our communication commitments, which really grew last year out of a conversation with staff and then a conversation that we had with interested parents, and we put together just different ways that we're committed to communicating. And I think one theme, again, throughout this whole thing is this idea of difficult conversations and being transparent and knowing that we're all on the same team. So, like I mentioned, continuing to build opportunities to engage parents, and then just having opportunities for principal roundtables. We heard loud and clear from parents about that desire for connection and maybe some more informal settings. It sounded like, and I agree as a parent, like people don't want to be talked to, they want to be talked with, and so trying to be very open to all of those sort of back and forth conversations. So I don't have the same attention span that Mrs. Kadash does. Does anybody have questions about this section?
Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm somewhat embarrassed to not know the answer to this, not a setup. The principal roundtables is new this year that you're doing?
Yeah, we had one last year, so now we'll have that more consistently throughout the year. Okay, so this is around collaborative practices. So here we see just an increasing frequency about dialogue about goals and about students, and I really want to give Ms. Evans and her team a huge shout out. They have worked so hard in developing the MTSS process and continuously improving it and being responsive to the needs of kids and teachers. And so even just today we went over how do we streamline our behavior referral system. And so teachers feel like, wait, someone listened to me. We said it was too complicated. They simplified it and made it incredibly timely. And so that's just been dynamite in terms of increasing also the teacher-to-teacher connection in talking about kids. And then teacher-to-teacher trust. I can't see. Okay, so this is something that a couple of years ago we had some really difficult conversations around, this is our data, and how can we continue to build trust amongst each other and have those difficult conversations, because I know Dr. Singh often says the most difficult conversations are the most important ones to have. And so I can just give one anecdote from literally 5 days ago, where a teacher was upset because she was not included in another group of teachers' conversation about curriculum. And it was in that moment that she had a decision to make. Should I just keep it to myself, or should I go and talk to them in a collaborative way? And she did. And I think everybody was like, oh, that was brave. And it was so successful so that the team can move together, move forward together. So I think those really difficult conversations are really genuinely the most important ones. And I think increasing exposure of teachers' own personal expertise in front of other teachers. So opportunities to go in and see other people teach, to give teachers an opportunity to teach one another. We're really excited. In a couple weeks, we have a group of teachers that's leading a professional development for all the teams in the building. And so building that capacity, I think gets people to see, hey, everybody here is really good at what they do. And so I think that's something that we continue to focus on. Professional development. Okay, I've been thinking about this one a lot. Something, again, I'd really like to just lean into this idea of what's a benefit of being in a small district. As you know, we are rolling out a new math curriculum for grades K through 5, which is a small portion of this building when you consider grades 6 through 8 and all the exploratory teachers. And so what we did this year is, actually at the end of last year, we met with all of the teachers and talked to them about what is something that you would like to focus on professionally in terms of your own growth. Not a goal or like creating a product, but just you as a practitioner, what are things that you would like to learn more about? And so we put together an entire list and then spent a lot of time over the summer reaching out to experts to connect teachers with people who can provide that service for them. So this year at our October 4th Institute Day, there are going to be a whole bunch of consultants and people connecting with teachers on things ranging from adaptive skills in exploratory classrooms and how we can support all students to some of our social studies teachers really want to know more about the local economy. So we've connected with the former treasurer, is that him? And former Sunset Ridge
I
Parent
think he's assessor.
assessor. Thank you.
Yeah, do your taxes.
Tax assessor. So he's coming in to meet with those teachers. And then we have a middle school ELA coach who's working with our ELA teachers separately on different things that they're interested in learning. So I think that that is such a gift that we have, that we're able to do that and really meet teachers where they're at. Okay, so I mentioned these things about having opportunities for dialogue and working really hard to have those difficult conversations to build respect. And then making sure that our professional development plan is not only, professional development is not only tied to the strategic plan, but that it includes opportunities for collaboration across different content areas. So we have several teachers who ask, I'd love to know more about how I can integrate writing into science. And so those teachers are working together on their professional learning. Any questions? Oh, no. Having the difficult conversations, and I think oftentimes, and this is something that I think all four of us really like to focus on, is helping to coach teachers into empowering them to build those skills to have those difficult conversations. So I think we all will continue to be very focused on how can I help you so that you can do that work. The team meetings and MTSS meetings, they're so intentional, and we're looking at data and talking about it very carefully. We talk about avoiding admiring the problem, and so we're trying to be very action oriented. And I think this one is just important to me, very personally. Finding the joy. I don't think there's a more difficult job than this job. This is the most difficult work and the most important work, and so I think it's really important that we help teachers find the joy in it. Okay, so effective leaders, the support of teaching, just giving feedback and trying to brainstorm. Hold on, I'm and trying to give really constructive feedback, but also with sort of a coaching model. So as opposed to, I saw this and it's bad or good, trying to really get teachers to be reflective, which is kind of scary sometimes. Teaching is really intimate, and so I think that it's important that we are here to support teachers in doing that. Okay, and I referenced just the curriculum and instruction and learning materials coordinated and the horizontal and vertical alignment, and I think, again, with Mrs. Crabtree's leadership, everyone, you could feel the excitement in the building. Oh, we're tackling ELA. We're getting started with world languages. We're implementing math, and people are feeling like there is a lot of action and energy behind the curriculum work. This is, just like with Mrs. Kadash, this is really important to me. And I know that you mentioned this also, I think one of the most difficult parts of our role is to differentiate, is to know some teachers want a shout out in the weekend update, and some teachers would be absolutely mortified, and that would be upsetting to them. So trying to really differentiate and meet teachers where they're at so that they feel seen and heard. Going on in my classroom, this is, as much as like I'm very happy that this is what people think, this is something I'm always aspiring to do more of, is to get in classrooms. I think we find so much joy getting in classrooms, and I'm so fortunate because once a month I co-teach in 8th grade social studies, and that's such a great time for me. I'm always really, really tired and reminded about how difficult teaching is, but connecting with the kids and getting to see their thinking firsthand is really powerful and a great reminder of why we do what we do. And to be honest, allowing the school to run smoothly, it really is such a testament to the team. Not just the teachers, but the teaching assistants, the custodial staff, the administrative team. So I think it truly takes a village to run any building. Okay, so just that alignment of curriculum, again, I think we're full of hope and excitement about what's to come, especially because the plan is so clear. So I mentioned the professional development, building on the work of literacy in the content areas, which we started last year. I was so happy to see when we put out the request for who wanted to be on the ELA committee. We have multiple non-ELA teachers who are interested in this work because I think they see the value of that cross-curricular work. And then just continuing to seek feedback about, did this work for you? Was this helpful? I know I often try to use different informal feedback documents for teachers, and I'll always say, like, was this helpful? And they'll be like, no, this did not help me at all. Or, yeah, do this one again. So that's just not a continuous improvement. Okay, so I was thinking about your questions about attendance. So we've seen relatively stable attendance. I have to say, I think some of it is due to exactly what Mrs. Kadesh was saying about, like, oh, it's 8th grade, they better be in school. I have to also say that I'm sure a lot of people are aware that New Trier has a new attendance policy, and it's very strict. And so them putting that in place has helped us have different kinds of conversations with parents here to say, yes, we support your travels and we're really excited for you, and get ready, right? Because New Trier is going to be a whole different game. So I think we're always working on that tardy piece, especially the way our schedule is, because 7th and 8th grade don't start with core classes, and so we definitely experience more tardies there. I think the increasing trend of disorder in the classrooms is simply the articulation of students coming from Middle Fork. So probably this year is the first year that we're having our new students coming in who have benefited from the work of behavior interventionists, and also that allows us to actually bring them in with a really solid plan, which is enormously helpful. While Middle Fork has to create the plans, we're benefiting from the hard work that they're doing in their building. The fluctuating trend of inappropriate language. I mean, recess. It's amazing what they know. And student disrespect of teachers. I really think that this is also sort of a function of the differing behavior expectations, oftentimes at home. And I think as a staff, we're trying to get really consistent about what respect looks like in my classroom is the same as what respect looks like in my next door neighbor's classroom, because we know that that's best for kids to have that consistent and predictable expectation. Fluctuating trend with serious behavior problems, the threats of violence, thank goodness, is stable and low. And then the physical conflicts among students, looks like it's generally increasing. Again, my incident log is thrillingly short. I know when I talk to other principals, even within the township, I usually keep my mouth shut because it is something that I think we're very responsive to, and we're addressing the student as opposed to just doling out discipline. Is that one of those? So this idea of intentionally building cultures of belonging, and I think Dr. Stang mentioned this with the seating. It's something that we continue to talk about. In fact, today we were talking with staff about administering kind of an informal survey to kids. Do you have a connection in the building? Just, do you have a connection? Checking in. We also do an activity as a staff where we put posters up of every student in the building and give teachers dots, basically, and they go around and they're like, I've got a connection with this kid and this kid and this kid. And then we're able to sort of visually see, wow, like, we need to really up the connections with maybe this group of students, or this student might be getting so many dots, and we know exactly why, and we think it's making a huge difference in their success at school. This idea, and this is something that Doug Bolton talked about at our opening day, the idea of focusing on upstream causes versus downstream behaviors. So not just like, oh, this, for example, today we were talking about a student who was reported he was picking on another student. And so we were able to kind of take a breath, like, yes, we don't approve of that, there will be consequences, but also why is he doing that? What's going on with him? And like then as we unpack that, it's, wow, he's really struggling in math. And that is embarrassing for him because he's an adolescent and we really want to be in tune with that. And again, that's to the credit of the teachers with their team meetings and talking about every single kid. And then accessing multiple resources, including not just a bulletin, but we're partnering with Kate Lotz, who we referenced her work about addressing trauma behaviors, and then trying to be really open-minded to, we have a need and let's reach out for a resource because we don't have everything in-house. And so I think we've started to really streamline that work. Fast enough? Yeah. Okay, supportive environment. So asking kids about safety, about are you trying hard to get good grades? And I think this is just such a testament to how great our students are. And again, I think we are constantly needing to adjust our approach because kids are constantly changing. I think anybody who has multiple kids can tell you that what they've seen in their oldest might be a little bit different than what they see in their youngest, even in like what they've been exposed to on social media or TV or movies or anything like that. So we're constantly adjusting. This might not be a side because I've lost track of my notes, but I wanted to just acknowledge something about our staff, and I don't think that they liked when I brought this up, but what I've been noticing, especially this year, that's really quite remarkable, is the difference in generations at work. Like there's actually, I think, a pretty popular book called Generations at Work that talks about the differences of when you have somebody that has been in the field for 30 years versus somebody who's been in the field for 30 days, right? And what I'm noticing in this staff right now is absolutely remarkable. We have veteran teachers who are bringing 150% every day, who are trying new things, who are taking risks. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of veteran teachers that are veteran more than 20 years who are implementing a new math program, and they're crushing it. And they're also coming and saying, okay, this kid is different, I need some resources, and they are inspirational. They don't like when I call them veterans because they say they feel like they're 150. But I'm also a woman of a certain age. So on the flip, we also have the new generation. So we have a teacher that graduated in May from college, and she's dynamite. And our younger, newer teachers are bringing innovative ideas. They're brave. They have incredibly high work ethics, and they implement things with such rigor and such student-centeredness. It's really inspiring. So the fact that we run the gamut and that there's no one phoning it in is just phenomenal. Which I think results in the feelings of supportive environment. Something that we keep trying to encourage is independence and student self-advocacy. I know this week I have a meeting with the 8th grade parents, and I always say the same thing. We're encouraging them to advocate for themselves. I think that was feedback that I first got when I came to the district, is that kids were going to New Trier and they were scared to talk to their teachers. And so we're trying to really build this idea of, I might copy your parents in, but I'm going to communicate with you because you're ready to take on that responsibility. And then continue to emphasize learning versus grade focus. I think our kids have a lot of pressure on them. They feel a lot of anxiety. We've got kids that are very focused on what's the grade, and so we're constantly trying to look at did you learn it? Do we have evidence of learning and growth? And trying to get kids to really feel proud of that progress as opposed to it's an A or a B, while also recognizing that that's the nature of the world, that's important feedback for them as well. So ambitious instruction, this kind of goes to that rigor, critical thinking. Critical thinking is something that I think we are always considering and wondering how we can continue to do better. I think it gets more and more difficult over time because our attention spans are changing and what's interesting to kids is changing. But again, a testament to the teachers to constantly be looking at different ways that they can approach engagement and learning. Okay, so trying to explore different approaches to student engagement and then explicitly teaching and modeling thoughtful dialogue between peers. So we very intentionally have a communications class in both 7th and 8th grade, knowing that we need to start building that ability to talk to one another and actually actively listen. So I might not agree with you, but I have to be listening, and through listening, I can actually even strengthen my own argument. So we're trying to be really explicit with that. And then providing opportunities for students to connect with teachers. And right now we have different things in place, like some of you have heard SS Connect, where we partner students with a teacher mentor. And we have a teacher group that's now starting to explore this idea of building a support team proactively. So not a kid who comes up and says, oh, we probably should connect them with a mentor, but trying to create supports for all students to support them through their time at Sunset Ridge in a proactive way. Oh.
Comment, but I appreciate that it's sort of preparing your soul to see how it's shaping out your head. So I just want to appreciate it and productive conversation within that.
I'll just say, first of all, lots of those numbers look really great and are very encouraging, and so thank you and congratulations on that. Regarding the student behavior thing, I'm kind of circling back around, and I have some sort of thoughts and questions related to Ruler. So even though the data I'm talking about is probably more applicable to middle fork, I'm bringing it up now because I want you both to talk and you're more in charge of Ruler. I feel like, as I'm thinking about it, like if I put in my previous jobs, I've been a medical statistician. If I put my medical statistician hat on and I say, is this new intervention that we're trying working? I see worrying signs that the answer is no or not well enough. And that most new interventions that get designed and implemented fail. That's just sort of the nature of the universe somehow. And many of them actually sometimes backfire and make something worse. And so I'm looking at this data, and I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, and a lot of this is kind of small sample size and relatively new. But if Ruler were this magic weapon that we're solving all of our behavioral problems, these trends would look different than they are. And it makes me wonder if, at the very least, it's perhaps not up to the task that we're giving it. In the middle ground, it's not doing much of anything and we need something to do something. Or at the most pessimistic end, it could almost be making something worse because the correlation between Ruler implementation and behavior trends are that. And so I just want this to be something that's thought about it, and I'm not giving any sort of, clear, argument for something, but it's just something I'm noticing and wondering what you're thinking about that.
Excellent question. First of all, I'm not in charge of Ruler. We all are. And I think that one of the things, just today we were talking about, I don't know if you remember, that the teachers do an SLO where we measure student progress. And something last year we focused on SEL, and this year we're going to focus on SEL again. And what we're finding is that Ruler is giving us a lot of tools, how to talk about emotions and things like that. But that's part of the story, right? Social emotional competency is the whole story. So Ruler is a path to get there, and we're building other competencies around that. So sure, Ruler can show me how to find a feeling in a mood meter, but we need to also help kids be able to reflect and understand how to deal with feelings when they're not comfortable. So that's one piece just about Ruler, is that Ruler's one thing. And I think, in retrospect, we probably could have done a better job talking about the bigger picture, but I think Ruler's digestible, right? It's like, this is something concrete that we're focused on. I think to your point about the behaviors, think about, and I know that Ms. Evans has shared this multiple times, that like triangle where 80% of your students can respond to your core instruction. And when we talk about these student behaviors, they're in that tippy top of the triangle. They're big behaviors, but it's a small number of students. And so when we look at actually the 80%, I'm looking at my incident reports. I'm looking at my levels of bullying. I'm looking at my levels of peer conflict and resolution, and those are improving. And I think that is a result of being really upfront and transparent about the importance of emotional intelligence. So that's not to say that ruler is the end-all be-all, because we never thought it was. It's sort of the first step in social emotional learning for us. But I think the behavior data is a little bit deceiving because it truly is that tippy top. And I think, and Mrs. Kadesh can speak to this even more than I can, but even in this big building, when we have one student who has explosive behaviors, the whole building feels it. And so I think it's a really difficult piece of data to look at and really put in perspective because the number of students is very small. Is that fair?
I don't want to dive into that on data perspective. I think the other thing to keep in mind before we jump to any conclusions about the impact of ruler, we're in really year one of almost full implementation. So we're 3 years into ruler. Year one was just teacher education, adult SEL. Year two last year, which was year one with students, was just the framework of the basics of the ruler program. And then this year we're diving in a lot deeper to build on that framework into strategies and how does this apply. We spent all day IB and I meetings, and then Jen and I tomorrow with staff calibrating this SLO. We also have new data sources this year that we'll report back to our committees that are directly measuring that impact at the student level in terms of the skills they're demonstrating, that they're reporting to us and that we're seeing that we can calibrate together with this data to tell us, and then in 3 to 5 years post year one, so 2 more years, that's when we have enough data to help us know if what we're doing with ruler and SEL bigger is working. So we're watching the data carefully, caution on interpreting anything yet, and we have better data coming. Just do it. Well, we're getting to the end of our meeting. Any burning comments or questions? Okay, well then, thank you so much to the staff. Just to echo my fellow board members, it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to be able to share this type of data and to be open to really having a conversation about it. So thank you for that. And the data looks really, really great. You should be so proud as a school community, the direction that of where we're at, and also the direction that we're heading. So thank you for all of your hard work. So with that, our next education committee meeting, I believe, is November 12th. Thank you, November 12th.
And if you have any feedback about this setup before the November meeting, please let me know. Take some time to think about it and let me know.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, if we could just take just a minute so I can scoot our tables across. Now, if you don't mind that, there's like, I feel like a band and orchestra concert. Exactly. All right. What's that? They're from the watch. Remember, it's a live stream. I didn't know what I was going to do. I really wanted to just turn these back on. But watch out because you're automated so they're disconnected. See that? Yeah. So if you want to move around your seat at all, feel free. If you want to
Thank you for being there. So I'm interested in like, is he telling you about it? Yeah, what he needs to do. Yeah. I'm just like, we're like hoping because they're at some graduating 8th graders. And so the fact that he's like totally scared. I appreciated it. But anyway, he's great. It's like we're always positive. Yeah, and it's funny, I asked him, I think he's it sounds like it. And it seemed like in choir. He's saying, Mom, right. Yeah. It's different. Yeah. I mean, I think she's dynamite. She's different than Joe. Right, and he's with 8th grade. But she's like so passionate about choir. I hope you like feel it. I met her at I would know if he wasn't having. Great, I'll take it. I'll let you know. Thank you for checking in. Yeah.
Check, check. Mr. Pitt. Oh. It's probably the easiest. All right. They're sitting right next to me. Check, check. Mr. Pitt. Here. Mr. Dawson. Here. Mr. Zion. Here. Ms. Joseph.
Here.
Mr. Keeman.
Here.
Ms. Dana.
Here.
Ms. Hall. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Move on. I didn't do it. You too.
Back, back. Yeah, that's from this. I'm not. All right. I don't know if we are. Are we, for the minute, I hear no mic. Does that mean like all our? Hold on. You know what? Good for you now. Check, check. All right. That's
All right. Any changes or updates to the consent agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the last board meeting and payroll certifications and member reports?
so. Ms. Hall. Ms. Dana. Mr. Keeman.
Yes.
Ms. Joseph. Mr. Ziegel.
Aye.
Mr. Dawson.
so successful. I just wanted to congratulate you on how incredible your students are and your staff is. The kids have been such an example of how easy it is to change such a long-living habit, understanding the benefits of the change, and being very enthusiastic and taking it on in stride. It's a real lesson to me every day as an adult, taking this lesson from them on how easy it can be to change this habit. The staff in Lunchroom has been so supportive, and if there's been some kind of way that I've observed that something can go a little bit easier or smoother, they've been so receptive and so enthusiastic, and it's just been a real pleasure to be here. I just wanted to tell you that. A couple things that I'm watching are one, as I said before, waste management is challenging, and I have spoken a little bit with Tom just to keep me in the loop if we're receiving punitive fees, because in my observation of what we're doing at campus is pristine, and the disconnect between the corporate tells us we can do and the driver's evaluation of what's going in the truck, there's often a huge disconnect there. So I'm staying in the loop as far as that goes and monitoring it. I'm also learning a ton about food safety rules and regulations and staffing and cost ratios in lunchroom, and that's been fascinating. I will say that the amount of waste that your lunchroom uses is shocking, breathtaking. The amount of waste that is used for maybe 30 seconds before it goes in the landfill is really upsetting. And I never had this kind of perspective on it before, and it's been really eye-opening, and I enjoy the lesson. So I've also talked to Tom a little bit about how can we modify that, like what are our options, how we can look at options that also make this composting system a little bit easier. So we just wanted to kind of key you in on the dialogue that's happening and the progress, but overall, it's so successful. The kids are so enthusiastic and completely into the situation. And I only had one debate with one kid, and that was, a wonderful moment where we had a quick, tete-a-tete, where he questioned, if this was really making any kind of difference in the world, and we had a little, 5-minute discussion about that. And that was a wonderful opportunity that I was very grateful to have. So, just to wrap it up, very successful, keeping my eye on it, educating volunteers every day, and just so grateful that we've been given the opportunity as an organization to work with you and bring this to you. Thank you so much for allowing us to do that and for bringing it to your students.
Maybe the other one was fine, but I think the partnership with the University of always appreciate public comments as the best way to express anything you want us to report. So thank you for that. Any other audience comments? If not, there's one thing on board of discussion is there's an election coming up, and so those of us that are
think what I most appreciate about this is all the great people that I have an opportunity to work with and get to know and become friends and colleagues. So,
Dan, thank you for your service, in the program. We'll keep going on then to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, since we like in the board packet, there is a memo regarding the Information Act request log. We had one request this past month, all responses out and it's work for all. Next is the monthly enrollment report. You can see what our data is. We're at 504 students this year. There's a couple charts in your board pack as well that show what our enrollment has been since 1989-90, and shows you by building as well as by grade level how many students are there. And then you can see the demographers data and the last chart there that shows the actual versus predicted, which I think at some point will switch to TV demographers. I think the bottom line on that is our enrollment's up, increasing, when you might be hearing other school districts decreasing enrollment, we're increasing. All class sizes are coming over to your students. Any questions on that? Next item on the agenda is personnel report. You see there are two items, termination of employment and a recommendation for employment, both teaching assistants, that we'll discuss in closed session. Any questions on those? School and department updates. I'll just do this up and then you may need to grab that microphone right there in case you have anything you want to add. It's been a great start to the year. We had a couple of great institute days. We welcomed a boatload of new staff. I started off Institute Day talking about three things. One is cultivating a culture of belongingness and inclusion. Two is our strategic plan goals, and three is safety and security. Three touchstones that drive us. That followed a slew of presentations. Dr. Bolton came in and talked some more about how we cultivate belongingness and inclusion. And I really want to emphasize this. I talked about this myself and Doug talked about it. When we talk about belongingness and inclusion, it's belongingness and inclusion of all families, of all staff, and of all kids. Even when people have a different voice, a different opinion about things, how do we cultivate that? But we had a great institute day. We welcomed a boatload of new staff. We've had a great start to the school year. There's some highlights in your board packet from each of the administrators of what's going on. Anything when we first turn to you that any of you want to highlight out of your memo here? One thing I did want to say, since kind of a little bit of a buzz, we had a false alarm lockdown at Middle Fork yesterday, and I don't want to talk too much about school security in open session. There was a communication issue with just a reset from our test on Friday. We worked with our alarm company, that competition has been resolved, it's been reset. What the lockdowns do, I said even here at Sunset Bridge and at Middle Fork, this is why we practice this. We learned a lot of things in both lockdowns, particularly about areas of the school where an audio message may be harder to receive than in other areas. And we've already, this is your highlight left, but we've already had Sonatrol, our security company, in here, looking at options that we can do to ensure that when there is a lockdown, it doesn't matter how noisy the environment is, everybody will be able to know that there is a lockdown. It's an ongoing process, but we know what we're doing. Some people have also asked me if you saw the terrible situation down in Georgia. The staff raved about their badges. Their badges had on the back of it an emergency button. Press it. Did in their case 4 times to call the office for an emergency, 8 times to go straight to the police department. And they said in the Georgia case that was critical to getting mitigating the damage that was coming. And so we're already looking into that and seeing what can we do to enhance safety and security. So I'm really grateful for the drills we practice and the learning we've done. But nothing else that I want to add. Any questions that any board members have about anything in the board packet in terms of school updates or just
doing that, right?
You also, as a subset of 5.4, school and department updates are the September financials. So you have the regular monthly financials that Mr. Bureau gave you, as well as the investment report, since we took over our own investments from the township. That's included in your board pack. We will do later on in the agenda approval of the budget for this year. So, but Mr. Bureau is not here, so Mr. Bureau, anything you'd like to add on that? No? All right, we'll move on then.
Next item is board.
Policy committee, we just had a second reading of the limited board policies for recycle, some of which we need to change over the statutory update to references to the forward language in the statute that for second notes. And then we can have a motion to approve the board policy updates. Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Say nay. That motion carries. Thank you.
Next meeting is December 3rd, 2024 at 9 a.m.
Well, that, totally makes sense. I think so there's only a couple items here, but one big one that I can facilitate here. So first is the annual posting of taxes and posting standard. Posting is in the board packet, and then 6.2B is a public hearing on the 2024-2025 budget. So you'll remember the pause the current meeting, open the public hearing, close the public hearing. So if I can get a motion to suspend the current regular board meeting.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Thank you. That motion carries.
And that's what we're going to open the public hearing for the 2024 budget.
I didn't really sign. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Say nay. All right.
Are we moving to the public hearing? Are there any audience comments? Public comment? No other audience comments? I can get a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Thank you.
I get a motion to resume the regular board meeting.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Okay.
And last but not least, can I get a motion to approve the formal 2024-2025 district 29 budget?
So moved.
Yeah, we didn't open it for discussion, Mr. Green and we're around, but we're going to use the retroactive discussion points that anyone wants to make a comment, you can do that now, you know, or
Well, we haven't voted. Yeah.
we're not going to.
I tried to have my friends call him on his cell phone. That's why he was trying to. Mr. Beerlight, is there anything you'd like to say about it? Yeah, it's on.
Good evening. I did receive one question related to the budget on our capital accounts. And just a breakdown of those accounts, we have a number of capital accounts in the budget. I'll quickly go through. We have a food service capital account, $6,000 budget for some monitors and purchases here, monthly monitors. We have a $10,000
survey on culture and climate that was mandated by the state. I thought that the presentation was really thoughtful. We had a great conversation where we decided to move the tables to be a little bit more discussion oriented versus a presentation, with feedback. And so we will think about whether that worked or whether that would facilitate some deeper conversation and looking at that data. Those conversations always seem like there's not enough time. So maybe just take a couple of minutes. If anybody had any additional questions or additional thoughts, we could take a few minutes to talk about it now.
Yeah, I had one thought I shared earlier. First of all, the presentations were great and deeply appreciated, very informative. So when I looked at some of the initial kind of summary data, bar charts, to compare to other districts, I saw a couple of outliers and trends that were initially concerning, but when you go into the detail, because the devil's in the details of this, and to the survey results under each category for each school, the numbers are overwhelmingly strong and positive. And that's not to say there are outliers, because there are outliers that can bring the averages down, those are the bar chart in the summer. And there's always room for improvement, that's what we're here for, is continuous improvement. But I just want to make the point that you really, before you jump into conclusions on summary bar charts, that you've got to kind of dig into the granular data, and when you do, it's much more very positive.
For anyone who may have missed the education meeting, the presentation's online, the recording's online, you can take a look at that. I especially really appreciated the part on the Clean School Partnership and the link for that. So thank you.
Yes. Appreciate the meeting, the ability to bring a very soul when you do these things, and so there's data there, so probably that's great, right? Something we're working on. It's minor about it, but it's good to have a thoughtful and constructive discussion about that. That's probably us for being able to have some of those difficult discussions with others. More to come. There wasn't a serious discussion but just following out that's a good discussion. Anybody else?
Next education committee meeting is on November 12th at 5:30.
Thank you very much. Moving on to external relations. People have nothing to report. So that's okay. Anything from IAB? Well, believe it or not, the year has passed, and we're looking at the joint annual conference taking place in Chicago in November. I'll be attending on behalf of the districts. And we will be receiving the proposed resolutions that come from all of the states across a variety of topics. And the ISD will weigh in which one of those resolutions they recommend for adoption or not. And that doesn't mean that they're going to become state law. It just means that the ISD will officially vote as a body whether or not to recommend those to the legislature and they become part of the legislation, maybe not. But that is the first step. So by October, the October meeting, we will have the list of resolutions and the ISD position. Now, thanks. It is a last process. Section 2, anything from PG 29 PTO?
Sure. Jenny and I are the liaisons for the PTO, and a big thank you to Randy and Gar for a really tight, wonderfully first PTO kickoff meeting. She's been the president, so congratulations to Randy. 7:30. I don't think it's going on anymore, but hopefully people were able to join that. It was a fun way to meet families. Parent Connections is September 26th. We talked about that and our amazing superintendent who does deep dives. This particular Parent Connections is going to be on Middle Fort capital improvement. We also talked about bike safety week at PTO, something that we really look forward to, and the fact that moving the park is going to be on October 18th at 6:30 p.m. I believe it's the really long day. So those are some of the highlights.
Next up, True North.
True North update is, as we all have heard, District 34 is requesting to withdraw and going through the voluntary withdrawal process. And what that means for us, I won't repeat anything that I've already said, but in probably the next few months, we will get a formal request and a report from them that has sort of some financial and practical details. And then we will have 60 days to vote on it as a board, and we can request more information if we choose. So basically that 60-day window will probably include 2 board meetings, probably one where we'll talk about it and decide if we want any more information, and then maybe a second where we'll vote or something like that. And I suspect that'll happen a few months from now.
Point of information on that. The vote is not whether we want folks to stay in, or it's whether we think that they have the capability to administer the program themselves without being part of the norm.
It depends on how one understands and interprets the situation, and there was lively discussion on that question. Some people are like, well, the question should be framed that way, or some people are like, well, a vote is determined by the effect that it has, and that's really what it's about. So it is, I mean, there you get to vote how you decide and interpret the vote to be about, is I think the final answer. The question is recommended to be framed as, do you feel that they are financially and et cetera able and ready to do that? You can make your decision how you see fit.
But the reality is it has to be unanimous vote.
It has to be a unanimous vote of all the member districts.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be every single board member of every single district, but it needs to be every single district. So if 4 of us voted no, then they go to the non-consensual withdrawal process, which involves a court or some sort of legal body that is a combination of Cook County and Lake County. You can imagine how bureaucratic that is. And then they need to make their decision. We were told that that would probably take years. And then it's possible maybe even that there could be an appeal to somebody above that. And you can imagine that would take even more years. So just as a way of thinking about that.
So if we as a board need to give you direction in the next 2-3 months, right, how B29 deals with vote in this case. So
Well, if all of us vote, yeah.
We will have both.
we will have a vote.
Yeah, it's not me, it's not Sam Tiedemann voting. All 7 of us vote on this.
Okay. So, for our discussion, we want our council to properly interpret what we're saying in this, or we can take time before we go.
Absolutely. We'll make sure you have all the scaffolding you need to be able to execute it.
Anything else?
Also quiet.
Moving to closed session for the following. First, discuss the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you all.